Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we have finally reached the Britannian documentary. I know, I've been stalling for this documentary for a while, but we're finally here. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So starting off hot here, I'd just like to mention I have finally gotten some actual Tufkin weapons. Like, these were used in battle by the Tufkins, so these are actual weapons made by them. These were all donated by Fardonia, so these are all Fardonian. But this is a Britannian spear that was purchased from Britannia, so Fardonia purchased this Britannian style spear from Britannia. Fardonia purchased it from them. And then this is a genuine, like, Fardonian sword. So nice to have these, and I will include these in the video. And now let's get into the actual documentary. Okay, so to start off, Britannia is a Tufkin nation east of the Western Valley, which is where Rome thrives. It was located on the North Tufkin side, so North Tufka, pretty much, was Britannia, which is where Britannia was located. So, Britannia was founded during the, pretty much a bit before the War of Threats. Pretty much when every other Tufkin nation was founded, like nation, not just like tribes at that point. They became recognized as nations. Most did during the War of Threats, and Britannia was one of them. So they had a big role, actually one of the biggest roles in the War of Threats. They sided with Ireland, and I believe no, that's it. I'm pretty sure Britannia and Ireland were teamed up against Rome, Japan, and I believe the French, or maybe it was China. I can't remember, but something like that. So it was kind of like those two were just kind of like those two sides were opposed. So Britannia was allied with Ireland. So finally, the War of Threats comes to an end when Japan finally has a physical conflict with Britannia. They send over their forces, Japan does, to Britannia, and they also bring some Chinese and French mercenaries with them. So it's pretty much Japan, China, and the French, all versus Britannia. So Britannia lost, obviously, and Ireland fell shortly after. I believe a little bit after that, Britannia was invaded again, this time by Japan and Rome. But this time, Japan and Rome actually lost to Britannia. And I believe after that point, Japan had a civil war. Sokuchi, I forgot. I'm just going to call it the Japanese Civil War. But hopefully we'll have the Fardonian or the Tufkin documentary out, so we can have it more accurately depicted, but something like that. I also forgot to mention, Britannia did take part in the agreement of bottle caps being the official currency of Kokka. So they did use bottle caps. I don't think that's super important, but I might as well just I guess discuss it, So yeah, Britannia's economy was pretty much based off of wood and mineral like rocks resources. They're mostly selling it to other Tufkins and even Rome. Britannia also later sold land to Rome, which was then sold back to them later, but Rome set up a few colonies in Britannia. I like to think of Britannia, honestly, as like the Africa, almost like the Africa of Kokka, simply because the most colonies in terms of like an already habited region, that was Britannia. Britannia was colonized and conquered by Rome, Fardonia, the East Barbarians, like all sorts of stuff. So they've really just been battered over their lifetime. So yeah. Anyway, so as I was saying, Britannia. Where did we leave off? Oh yeah. So Britannia. Okay, so the Japanese Civil War. Britannia mostly stayed out of that. So did Rome. In fact, pretty much all of Tufka just kind of stayed out of that. At that point, Japan was no longer the Tufcan superpower. At that point, I believe it was the Portuguese Empire that was the Tufcan superpower at the time. Unfortunately, the Portuguese were later destroyed by the Eastern barbarians, and then they just kind of faded away into history. But they were at a time the Tufcan superpower, with like some of the most incredible forts and bases known in Kokka. So they are remembered for this. But after the Japanese Civil War began the TFOA War, I believe. Yeah, I'm almost certain. I can't quite remember how the TFOA War quite started. I do, however, I'm like 75% sure it started after the Japanese Civil War, however. And then went from then on to the Athenian conflict. And then that marked the end of the TFOA War, and then marked the beginning of the Fardonian Empire. So yeah, I think Britannia, again, throughout that period, just kind of stuck to itself for the most part. Until about I believe the mid to late TFOA War, Britannia rose up, because Britannia and Fardonia, or TFOA, my bad, made an agreement to where if one went to war, the other went to war too. So there was a time of peace during the TFOA War, a little bit. So once the Britannian or TFOA made this agreement, Britannia declared war on Rome, and therefore TFOA, according to their agreement, had to join Britannia in war against Rome. And thus began the raids of Rome, aka the Siege of Beta. So, Britannia, after being in the shadows for so long, pretty much just got ambitious, like super ambitious. So, now that they had the Fardonian support, they could then go after the biggest, baddest nations out there. And since they couldn't target Fardonia, since they were the key to doing everything, like all that, they picked on Rome, the second. Or maybe the, at the time, who knows. But they targeted Rome anyway. So, thus began the raids of Rome. So, or aka the Siege of Beta. So, the Siege of Beta consisted of 2 battles in 2 days. The first wave being purely Fardonian forces, which were almost immediately defeated. Relatively easy wave. And then the second, oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, the first wave also had the Fardonian king, why do I keep saying Fardonian? TFOA, they were TFOA at the time. Sorry, the TFOA King Henry of TFOA was in the first wave and was killed. Now, the second wave, the second attack on the second day of the raids of Rome, aka Siege of Beta, consisted of the Britannian forces and the rest of the Fardonian forces. Now, this was the big battle. Like, this was the battle, like, that... This was the battle. Like, the first wave was more of a skirmish, a short skirmish. This was the actual, like, battle, like a long battle. Okay, so, Rome, obviously, defending Beta, and the other forces sieging Beta. So, the battle went on, and eventually both forces were weakened pretty bad. Actually, that's not true. My bad. Rome was actually kind of kicking their trash. I remember now. That was not true. They were actually getting their trash kicked. So, Rome made them a proposition. If the King of Britannia, King Kaidan of Britannia at the time, could beat Emperor Bruton of Rome in a 1v1 match. If Kaidan could beat Bruton in a 1v1 match, Rome would surrender to Britannia. But if Bruton won, and this was a battle to the death, so if Bruton won, then the Britannian, the rest of the Tufcan forces had to leave back to their home. So, Kaidan agreed, because they were kind of getting their trash kicked. So, the battle began, and Bruton came back victorious. So, the Tufcans left, and Rome knew the situation between Britannia and Fardonia, so they respected the fact that Fardonia also respected their treaty with Britannia, so Rome didn't target Fardonia after that. No, they targeted Britannia. So Rome got a little bit of revenge on Britannia. And by a little bit of revenge, I mean like full-on invasion. So shortly after the raids of Rome, or the siege of Beda, Rome decided, or Bruton decided, that this was like so uncalled for, and it disrespected Rome to the core, pretty much. So they decided to invade Britannia in return. Now this time, since Britannia had lost almost all of its forces during the raids of Rome pretty much marched in with its armies, and Britannia had either to face complete annihilation off the face of Kokka or surrender. So they chose surrender, and Britannia then became a territory of Rome. So they were pretty much slaves of Rome at that point. So that's when Farah was built and founded, and the invasions of Tufka begun, like the actual invasions. So Farah was the capital military fort of Britannia once Rome conquered Britannia, and they started building colonies and other fortifications over there. So they were gonna use Britannia as their vassal to get into to Tufka, and yeah, obviously TFOA. But Rome later instead just decided not to, because they were planning something else or something. I can't remember quite the reason Rome didn't proceed with that plan, but they ended up selling the land back to Britannia. So Britannia then became independent once more, and Rome left Tufka. I did also forget to mention that during the middle of about the mid TFOA war, so before the raids of Rome, Octavius came to power. So Octavius was the emperor, the one and only empress of Rome. She goes by a few names. Octavius the Tyrant, Octavius the Coward, or Octavius the Cruel. Yeah. So she was like a full-on hardcore tyrant. So she basically assassinated Bruton when Bruton was getting married to her, oppressed the people of Beda and Rome, just abused her power to the absolute limits till the military of Rome abandoned her, and she also threatened TFOA with invasion. So TFOA actually sent a small army to Rome to assassinate her. They succeeded because there are only a few units that actually stayed loyal to her, because most of the military abandoned her because they hated her rules. Too cruel. So she was assassinated by TFOA, and that was one of the peace times between Rome and TFOA. because TFOA kind of liberated Rome from a hell. Later, Britannia came back into power, because obviously, after 2 weeks of being dead, you come back, reincarnated. So, that happened, and I did forget to mention that. I apologize, I'm skipping over, but I also forgot to mention, during the occupation of Britannia, when Rome was occupying Britannia, I forgot to mention, TFOA was threatening Britannia with border expansion. I do remember this. Because apparently Britannia claimed they owned all the, like, their southern border was all the way up to Trump Rock, which was it still is pretty much a Tufkin landmark. It's like a spiritual rock or something. I'm not sure. I'm not Tufkin, so I don't know the complete story behind that. But it was a historical landmark, and Fardonia claimed pretty much all the way up. So there was like a road. There was a road that TFOA and Britannia, or Japan and Britannia, agreed to, like, during the first, like, after the first war, pretty much, or after the first war. So yeah, and that was a road, like, the modern day Britannian border. It was that border they agreed on, but Britannia, according to TFOA, Britannia was claiming southern territory all the way up to Trump Rock. So TFOA was like, no, either, like, we get that, or we are going to invade Britannia and take everything. Now, here's the problem. Rome was in control of Britannia at the time. They owned Britannia. So pretty much, or not owned, but more of like a client, almost. Or, I'm jumping again. I'm jumping. Okay, never mind. Sorry, not during the, occupation Britannia, no. So Rome left, reasons unknown, so Rome came back to Britannia and actually bought land from Britannia peacefully, okay? And then they occupied Farah again. Now, okay, so during the time in which Rome had bought territory from Britannia, that's when Fardonia was threatening Britannia with border expansion and that all that stuff. Okay, so the reason a battle/war never occurred is because Rome basically was threatening TFOA. They're like, hey, if you expand on Britannia, we're gonna see that as a threat to our land in Britannia, so back off. But if Britannia attacks you, we're not going to help them. We're just going to stay back, okay? But don't attack Britannia, or else we will get involved and we will help them defend Britannia. That was the dealio with that. So nothing happened. Eventually, they worked it out. Britannia had to move back to the original border, and TFOA got to keep their Trump Rock territory. Britannia would later just live peacefully. The Athenian conflict happened. They weren't really part of that. Rise of Fardonian Empire, all that good stuff. Britannia kind of just stayed out of it, honestly. Eventually, Britannia was the Britannian government and all that were destroyed by the Eastern barbarians. So Britannia is no longer a nation of Kokka. It has officially been destroyed after playing such a big part in the history, which is unfortunate, but it's part of how the game works. So Britannia is no longer. There are a few members of Britannia who still participate a little bit, but for the most part, Britannia is no longer a functioning nation of Kokka. So they're out. What happened to the land of Britannia? Fardonia didn't claim it. Rome did. And even today, Rome claims Britannia. Britannia is officially a Roman province in Tufka. During their height, Britannia was known for a few things, or militaristically, anyway. Quality of weapons. The quality of Britannian weapons was probably the some of, if not the most quality weapons produced in Kokka. The weapons were absolutely beautiful. And I do have a clip I made a while ago where I showcased these Britannian weapons, but for now we're going to do these. I'd say the most famous Britannian weapon is the Britannian style spear. This is an old Britannian style spear. I'm pretty sure this was made back during the First War, I bet. They've significantly improved since then, but this was it back then. It was very famous because Rome actually took their design a little bit, and this is now the Roman version of the Britannian style spear. In fact, Rome agreed with Britannia, or not really agreed with Britannia, but pretty much Rome classified anything the spear-like, if it was like about Britannian spear to length, like almost anything that was a Britannian spear that fit like the category of a Britannian spear, Rome considered a spear. Okay, if it was longer or shorter, like significantly shorter or longer, it was a pike, it was a lance, or it was a short spear. If it was just about the same, it was a spear. And in this case, Rome tried to copy it into the Roman-style, Britannian-style spear. Alright, so these are the weapons of Britannia in Kokka. So first off, to start off, we have these rectangular shields, similar to Kokka Roman shields, only these ones are thinner. Thinner, not like this thinner, but more of like they're less wide, skinnier. It's a better way to put it. And then there you have this like this the target as the symbol, which is actually the letter G. G for goat. In Socro, which is the Roman language in Kokka. Alright, then we have these swords. So we got this medium sword. Then we got this dagger this dagger, and then this medium sword here, which is nice for just about any situation. I messed up. That's embarrassing. Anyway, and then we have the saber here, the one and only saber. This is a very, very defensive. It can be offense, but defensive in terms of very good. It's got the guard here, 2 guards, the wrist guard and the guard. It can be used like for brass knuckles, and then it's got the nice long blade. So it's a really good sword. One of the best in Kokka, actually. One of the best designed swords. Then we got the classic. This is what made Roman spears. So I don't know. Roman spears got this thing to them, and it's thanks to the Britannian spear. This is the model of the Roman spear right here. The Romans based their spear off the Britannian spear. It's magnificent. Very well done. Very well made. We got the first lance, actually. Britannian lance. This thing is taller than I... Oh, that's my bad. This thing's taller than I am. This thing is long. Very deadly. And then they have these, bow staffs. These, flat bow staff-like things. Originally used for cattle and stuff. I'm not sure. Farmers or something would have these for crops and cattle and stuff. I'm not sure. But poor people, the poor Britannians would use those sometimes as little staffs. So yeah, that is basically practically the entire arsenal. What Britannian soldiers would have used in war. So yeah, that's about it. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this documentary, and please like and subscribe for more documentaries just like it. Anyway, I will see you all next time.